I think we're live. Hey, everybody out there. Friday afternoon, we're 8 days away from the Route 66 comic. I want to call it Comic Con. It's not. It's the Comic and Toy Convention. We had a Route 66 festival last week, and I keep getting those two confused, like all the time. But we're having a big comic book and toy festival at the Civic Center next weekend, put on by Massey's Comics and a lot of other fine sponsors. So today I'm getting ready to talk to Phil Hester, and this is one of those interviews that you really look forward to. I'm a big comic book geek. I got Batman tattoos. Like I'm like legit the thing. I put it permanently on my body, right? So to sit down and get to talk with them is amazing. And this is live, so if you're watching and you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the comments. And if time allows, we'll get to those questions. But without further ado, nobody wants to see me. You guys see me all the time. Phil, how are we doing, my friend?
Hey Ryan, I'm cool. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So before we get started, just for context, while everybody's coming in, we've already got a few viewers. While everybody's coming in, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and some of the bigger projects you've worked on.
Yeah, well, like you said, my name is Phil Hester, and I'm an Iowa-based cartoonist, and I've been writing and drawing comics for I'm I hesitate to say, but probably almost 40 years now. So I've been doing it for a long time. I've had notable runs on Swamp Thing and Green Arrow. And just recently, I did a book called Gotham City Year One with Tom King. But I've been at this so long and worked so many places that I am probably in your comic book collection, whether you like it or not.
I'm sure you are. I actually went and looked. You are in mine.
Yeah, there's no way to get around it. I'm ubiquitous.
I'm fixing something real quick here. So I'm going to ask you the first question. So,
Sure.
what is you've worked on some iconic characters like Green Arrow, The Flash. How do you balancing the legacy with trying to bring new things to the comic?
Right. Anytime you're hired, there's sort of this intrinsic quality that an editor or a publisher is looking for that's in your work. You know, they can get anybody off the street that has like the requisite drawing skills to draw their book. But if they come looking for you, there's something about your work that they're attracted to. And sometimes it's to hit a note that's not the usual note with a character. Sometimes it's to go lighter or darker or weirder than what's seen normally, especially if you're hiring me, because my work's not like completely mainstream. So it's I always sort of err on the side of like trusting my talent, however much of that there is, or trusting my viewpoint, because that editor is coming to me for that viewpoint. And I sort of cut loose. And if you go too far, the editor, the publisher will pull you back.
Was there ever a time that you got pulled back that way? That you just thought that this character should be doing this, and they're like, "Nah, that's not."
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time. It happens less now that I've been doing this for so long, such that it's like, as I said, when they come to you, they want you. And
Right.
now that I've been doing this so long, they sort of know what they're going to get from me. And so at the beginning of my career, I got reined in a lot. And now that I'm well established, and now that I'm actually a better artist now, 40 years into this,
Right.
I hope, I feel a little bit less of that like boot on my neck when it comes to like,
That does happen once you get that credibility over the years.
yeah,
That
whether you
that
earn it
people,
or not. Yeah.
yeah, whether you earn it. I used to be a stand-up comedian back in the day. I wasn't very good at it, and I bounced out. But I knew there were people worse than me, and sometimes they're just around because they stuck to it. You know,
Yeah,
they just did
that's a
the thing.
huge that's
You
a
know,
huge part of it. Yeah, not quitting is a huge part of any career.
it absolutely. You stick around long enough, you'll eventually get to where you're going. So you did touch on your art style a little bit. I want to bring up for people that are not familiar. You do have a very distinct art style, which is one of my favorites, right? It's more dark. It's not as I don't know how to explain it. Not as pointy. But I kind of see an influence of the older comic books. How
Yeah.
then, when the older comic books were very heavy lined, very whatever, we kind of come into new comic books, but your style to me anyway kind of reflects some of that older stuff.
Yeah, newer comic books tend to let the color carry a lot of the imagery. And I came up during the black and white explosion that kicked off with the Turtles.
Oh yeah, love
So,
that. Yeah.
yeah, like I started working professionally right about Turtle time. And overnight we went from, just a handful of comic publishers to dozens of comic publishers who were sort of chasing that turtle money. And at the time, uh, all those startups were in black and white because black and white was cheaper and black and white was more accepted by the comic buying public back then. But the printing was so terrible and the paper was bad. So, like, if your work was going to survive that printing process and be seen on the page the way you wanted it to be seen, it had to be bold. And that sort of pushed my style, which was already leaning that direction, to be even more like stark and bold and design oriented. And of course, I was like a fan of, in my teen years, I was a fan of those artists who worked in that high contrast style, like Alex Toth or Frank Miller, um, or in at least a bold style like Jack Kirby. So I've always been drawn to like that bigger than life kind of style.
Uh, Hold on a second. I lost something here. There we go. Somebody said we had an audio issue, so I was checking that real quick. So we're good. Everybody can hear
Cool.
us. Okay. So yeah, that go back to when you said the turtle money in black and white. Me and you are both
Yeah.
old enough to remember this, right?
Yes.
It is that yeah, for some of my favorite comics when I was growing up, they started doing like the Tales of the Crypt, old detective comics, stuff like that again. But around that time, Dark Horse, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
there put out the Ninja Turtles, and the Ninja Turtles were completely black and white. And that was
Yeah.
kind of unheard of, but that kicked off kind of that weird style that other comic books and other up and comers, because I'm guessing they did that for a monetary issue.
Yeah.
But you know way more about it than I do.
Yeah, it wasn't Dark Horse. It was Mirage.
Okay,
Eastman and
Mirage.
Laird put that out on their own. They
Okay.
they scraped together the $5,000 or whatever it cost to print that book,
Yeah.
and they did it on themselves. And that sort of kicked off a bunch of other smaller publishers that were like, "Look, we can put a comic book on a credit card, basically." And back then, you were guaranteed to sell 10,000 copies. Even like the lowest selling book would make its money back.
Yeah.
So all these publishers started up, but Dark Horse was already on the scene. But they were much more open to black and white books then too. It was just like it was a combination of like it was cheaper, and there was like from the underground scene, there was already like a built-in audience for black and white work. So, like if you were a comic book fan, in the early '80s, in the mid '80s, you'd already seen black and white books like you know, in the underground scene,
Hmm.
or like the rare Japanese comics that made it to the States were all in black and white already. So you were ready for black and white, and it wasn't like a shock to your system to see black and white books. So I think that there was like we had two things going in our favor. It was cheaper, and the audience was there for it.
So let's go to a little bit of Kevin Smith and Green Arrow, right? That seemed to be a very big popular thing. Kevin Smith got attached to it. How did you get attached to the Green Arrow with Kevin Smith?
Yeah, we Andy Parks and I had, who was my inker at the time. Uh, we had already done a short, one shot with Kevin at Oni Press called "Clerks: The Lost Scene," which was a redacted scene from the Clerks screenplay. And the editor there, Bob Schreck, had always sort of been looking out for us, trying to find us work. And he knew Kevin, and he sort of talked Kevin into like accepting us to do this one shot. And we found that like we meshed really well. We had a good sense of storytelling, how to like um, make Kevin's jokes land the way he wanted them to land. And so when Bob Schreck moved over to DC, he recruited Kevin for Green Arrow. And Kevin hadn't written a ton of superhero comics, but he was buddies with Joe Quesada, and he really wanted Joe Quesada to draw Green Arrow. But I don't know if you remember your comics history, but about that time, Joe Quesada got this other job running Marvel Comics. And so he wasn't
Yes.
available for Green Arrow. So Kevin sort of had moved down his list of cartoonists he trusted. And the next people on that list were Andy and I. And so Bob Schreck pushed for us to do that book at DC, which was, I have to commend DC because it was a big risk for them. Because, like I said, we don't totally have a mainstream style. And they were trusting what would eventually be DC's number one book to us, which was a big thing for us at the time.
No, it's in working. Tell me a little bit about working with Kevin Smith. I asked Andy when he was on the same thing. I got to interview the guy I got to interview Kevin Smith one time years ago. But just tell us a little bit about working with Kevin Smith and what his process. Because you're right, he's not a comic book guy. So you're in a world surrounded by comic book people, and then all of a sudden, a fan that garnered popularity is kind of writing a comic book. So
Yeah.
how was that process?
Well, Kevin comes from the world of screenplays. He comes from film.
Yep.
So he's essentially writing a screenplay and giving direction as a screenwriter would. And and Bob Schreck helped him break that down into the comic book format really well. But Kevin still writes dialogue that's very, very like stream of consciousness,
Yes.
very like character oriented. And in comics, you have to be really careful about how that dialogue is doled out such that it doesn't impede the reading experience. And I think what DC and Bob Schreck and Kevin liked about how we did it was we understood like how to break up the action such that people weren't just reading these walls of text. Um, they were seeing, I mean, there was a lot of dialogue. You get your money's worth in a Kevin Smith comic,
Yes.
but we were chopping it up in such a way that like you were getting it in digestible chunks. And I've gone on to work with Kevin again on things that I worked with him at Dynamite on the Bionic Man and Green Hornet as well. And in both of those cases, I was given a screenplay. I was given Kevin's screenplay treatment for those characters, and then asked to format that as a comic book. And it was really, really similar to what we were doing on Green Arrow.
Yeah.
Just sort of picking out the moments that deserve to be panels, deciding what pieces of dialogue deserve their own panel, when to bring characters up and push them back, all the same sort of decision making. And that's the technical aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is when you work with Kevin, you sort of enter the Kevin Smith universe, and your work comes under more scrutiny, and you get like a sort of like this whole subset of fans that you may not have had before that are suddenly exposed to your work and interested in your work. And it's been a real boon, and it definitely changed our lives.
So let me talk about, since we're talking about, wrong one. Let me talk about Kevin Smith real quick again, because this was announced yesterday, I believe, yesterday or the day before, how you are doing Archie with Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, I just the cover. I've done that.
Just the cover, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of artists that did alternate covers for this, but it's the wildest team up. Like
It really is.
Yeah, I think Archie, like you have to commend Archie for being very forward thinking about how they manage their iconic characters, because like even 10 or 15 years ago, the idea of Archie teaming up with like the world's most famous stoners
Yeah. Yes.
would be unthinkable.
And if you've seen those movies, there's a lot of situational language, everything that
Yes.
that they're kind of the anti-Archie. I know for a fact that Kevin Smith is a huge John Hughes fan.
Yes.
And if I remember right, John Hughes kind of pulled from a little bit of Archie, so in
yeah.
a second way. But Archie is just so wholesome and fun and loving, and not Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, but you have to. I think the people that control Archie are smart about playing against that, stereotype of Archie, like by doing Archie horror comics or greenlighting
Yeah.
Riverdale, things like that.
Yes.
And
Which
so
got real weird real quick, yeah.
yeah, really weird. But they lean into it because Archie is like, he's a top 10 iconic comic book character. So he has this like he has this built-in world that people that you can play against the expectations of, and definitely dropping Jay and Bob into that world is definitely plays against the tradition. And that's sort of why I chose the cover I did, because I couldn't think of anything more jarring than to see like Jay and Bob walking down the halls of your high school decked out in your high school's colors. That would be unusual
Correct.
for even for even like the a modern high school, much less Riverdale.
And yeah, and that's kind of the thing. I'm 47. Gotham by Gaslight, I think, was the first. The old ones was like the first one I kind of got sucked into. But then you go back and you read the Archies and the Tales and the this and that whatever. Because when you get into comic books, you kind of go a little bit backwards. And
Yeah.
I remember for a long time thinking that Archie was my grandma's comic, and then there was a time in there that you're right. Yeah, kudos to them that they stepped up and kind of changed their game, and now they're getting a whole new generation understanding who they are.
Yeah, it's been really well managed. I'm really impressed.
So one question that I have for you, in the day of, well, I guess I have two. One, are you still very traditional, or do you do any digital art, or are you still pen and pencil?
No, I'm a dinosaur. I'm one of those people that still does everything on paper. And part of that is just from my classical art training. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree,
Yeah.
and a lot of like the training I was given in college was like you have to really struggle with a piece before you can wrest something out of it that's worthwhile. And when you can just undo and go back, you sort of like you avoid the struggle. And I need that struggle. That's like the only time anything interesting ever arises from my work. So what you're watching is like evidence of a crime basically on paper. Uh, but also another aspect of it is that I'm an original art collector, and the idea of I collect other artists, other cartoonists' art. The idea that I could finish a page and not have a tangible piece of art at the end of it is really foreign to me, and it's too ephemeral, and I can't take that. As an artist, you want your work. You're sort of like
Yes.
struggling against mortality when you're an artist. Not to get too deep on it, but
Oh
like
no. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you're trying to do something that will outlast you, and the idea that it's just a bunch of like bytes in some server somewhere is really like startling to me. So I like the paper. I like to create something that's permanent, and I like the idea that someday somebody else will own that artwork.
No, that's very cool. I can't draw for anything. That's why I'm a graphic designer, right? I can't draw, so I got like Procreate and the pencil and the and
Hmm.
whatever. On the couple times in my life I've had the advantage of actually drawing something I like. Yes, it's framed and like put away and
Right.
whatever. So I get that. So I guess final question before we get on to promoting the show: what advice would you give? There's a lot of kids and there's a lot of people out there that are in digital world or plain pencil world or whatever. What would you give to emergence creators that are trying to break into comics today? What would you tell them? Because it's probably, I'm going to guess something here, and you're going to tell me how right or wrong I am.
Mhm.
It's probably harder to write for a big company now, but it's probably easier than ever in life to actually just go on your own, publish your work to some sort of audience.
Right. You nailed it. So it is easier than ever now to get your work seen. It's harder than ever to get paid for it. So when I started, I I felt like I was on top of the world because I was getting paid to make comics from the beginning. Now things are like vastly different. You can make your comic and you can throw it on the web anytime you feel like it. You can make a mini comic, bring it to shows. You can get a small print run book and bring it to cons. Um, but it's harder and harder to break in at the what we call the big two, which is Marvel and DC. Um, but if you're starting out and you want to do this for a living, you just there's one rule, which is start.
Yes.
Like make the book, um, because you've got to knock out like 100 terrible pages before you do anything worthwhile. And if you just sit back and wait for yourself to get better, you're not going to knock out those terrible pages. Like you've got to do them. And the only way, the thing that teaches best is work. So sitting down and actually like creating a book, you're going to learn so much about yourself and so much about this process. And one of the things you might learn is that it's not for you, you know. But if you get into it and you hit something really hard, you hit this wall where it seems like it's impossible to get over, and you still want to get over it, then this is for you. This is the art form that you were meant for. So I would say just start. And by the time you hit page 100, you're going to hate page one. You're going to think it was worth. You're going to think page one's terrible. That's a great sign. That's to me that says you're on the right track. And there's no magical graduation ceremony where somebody is going to come to you and say, "Congratulations, you're a cartoonist now." The only way to do it is to get a body of work. And I know that's tough because it might mean, 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 years of doing this without getting paid. And a lot of people aren't cut out for that. But if you love it, you'll stick to it and do it. Um, and if the work you're doing has merit, people will notice, and you'll get the call up. It's sort of like it's like being in a band. A lot of people just play in garage bands their whole lives, and they're happy with that, and that's awesome, and it's fulfilling. But if you're doing really impressive and intriguing work, record labels are going to notice, and
Absolutely.
they're going to come get you. And that's sort of the only way to do it now. You can't write like a 12 issue magnum opus that's going to change the DC universe and send it into DC. They're not going to look at it.
No.
But you can do a mini comic that's really impressive, and an editor up there is going to notice it and say, let's look for something for this lady. She's a great writer. She could do something here. And I know saying all this that it is much, much harder for writers than it is for artists. So if you can't draw, it's really hard to say, go out and make your comic. But if you can come to a place like the Route 66 show, and you'll see table after table of young artists that are starting out in comics. Those are your collaborators. If you're a writer, those are the people you need to team up with. All the people I work with now, 40 years on in this business, are all people I knew 40 years ago when we were snot-nosed kids, and our relationships were developed back then, and they're still intact today. So get out there, meet people, and mingle, and start making comics, because collaboration with another creator is one of the most fun parts of this job.
Absolutely. It can't express that more. I've always watched people in industries, whatever industry, when you collaborate, that always works way better. So let's talk a little bit about the Route 66 Comic and Toy, right? Comic and Toy Convention. You guys are going to be there. It's going to be yourself, Andy, which I know you were really good friends with, Cullen and Freddie Williams, and Jimmy Hart. Like, he's only going to be there for a couple hours, but everybody's pretty kind of stoked about Jimmy Hart. What should people expect from you when they come see you at the convention?
Well, when you come see me at the convention, I'll have a table like the other artists, and I'll have my artwork there for people to look at or buy if they felt like it. I'll have my books for sale. I will also be there signing whatever books of mine that you may have that you want to bring to me. I don't charge for autographs. Some art creators do, but I don't. And and I'll be happy to talk to you there about like any aspect of comics, or my work or your work, or just general questions you have about comics. We're just there to chat. It's a pretty low key show. It's really cool that a city the size of Lebanon can support a show like this. And I try to make it a point to travel to shows like this in the Midwest that are sort of like starting out, and sort of like lend whatever like credibility I can to those shows with my presence. And I can't wait for this show to. It was great last year, and I expect it to be even better this year and sort of start growing bigger and bigger.
I do too, and that's one of the reasons why our company got involved in it. Is we want to see it. One, me being a big comic book. I don't know if nerd is socially acceptable, but me
Yeah,
being a
it's
nerd,
fine.
Yeah. Me being like, that's what I am. I'm a comic book nerd, right? Me being a comic book nerd, loving the genre, loving all the things that go with it, and to see our town support this. Years and years ago, we tried this before, and it wasn't big enough to support it. But then Fines and Massey's Comics got involved. And got it built up and got it to where it is today. And I'm really looking forward to it. There's tons and tons of vendors. Here's a shameless plug for me. If you download the Lebanon Now app, there is a article on the Lebanon Now app with everything that you need to know about the Comic-Con. The vendors that are coming, schedules, everything that you need to know is on Lebanon Now. And also we are, if I do this, you can see me. All right, so if, it's whatever. I mean, you're the guest. I didn't want to do that. So
No, that's fine.
All right, so anyway, we're going to do the contest and prizes, cash prizes, Lebanon Now. I will be there. We're figuring out the live, being able to go live, record, and have some shows from there. So hopefully we'll get to sit down and talk to you again, Phil, and talk to people while we're there. We did have a couple comments. One of them, Chris Elliott, if you see a guy come in dressed as the Mandalorian with the absolute to the point a recreated costume of the Mandalorian, that is this guy right here. So you will probably see him that day.
I will know that is the way. Yes.
You will know that is the way. So shout out to Chris for that. Phil, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us today. It's an honor. And thank you, like you said, for coming to Lebanon, doing the convention. That is June 21st, starts at 9 a.m. Stay tuned here to Lebanon Now. We got more tickets to give away. I'm going to give away 2 more tickets. We got somebody signed up for 2 more tickets this morning. We got a contest going on. And we got another 2 tickets that we're going to give away this afternoon. So stay tuned for that. And once again, Phil, thank you so much for taking the time out today.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Follow Lebanon Now and all the other influencer things my agent